Hi, everybody. I am Victoria Longo with this week's Friday at 5. The topic this week is all about where you focus in a relationship. So I came up with this recently. I know a lot about how our mind works, how our thoughts work, and how our thoughts create our reality. I've spent years and years studying this, playing with this, learning this, and understanding it. So I'm able to catch myself when things, when my brain gets on, my monkey mind takes off on a tangent. And what had happened is I had an expectation of my partner for him to do something, and I don't even remember what it was at this point, but it was, I asked him to do something and he didn't. And I was disappointed. Obviously, I expected something from him. We had communicated it and it didn't happen. So I was disappointed. And with those emotions, I went off on this tangent of how I can't trust him. I can't rely on him. He's always letting me down. I have to do everything myself. And I noticed that this is an old pattern of thought. And I kind of caught myself when it started. I was like, wait, I can't trust him and I can't rely on him because this one expectation wasn't met. And I started thinking, and I pulled up another instance where I had an expectation that he didn't meet. And it was years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, where I was disappointed and I was hurt because I had this expectation that he was supposed to meet and he didn't. And that was kind of what caught me and broke my tangent, because sometimes when your mind gets off on that, a lot of people don't understand that we can control our thoughts. It takes work, but we can control them. Most of us are taught that we are at the mercy of them, right? We're victims to them and we have no control and we can't change them. And that's actually not true. We are 100% in control. So following the law of attraction, like thoughts attract like. With our brain patterning, we set certain patterns of thinking because of where we've been focusing. And so, these neurons fire and, we automatically repeat these patterns because that's how we've programmed it. It doesn't mean anything other than it's just a program that was there, right? So when I had this thought of he always lets me down, and I started trying to recall the other instances to validate my opinion of why I couldn't rely on him, why I couldn't trust him, and I had to go back years, that was the moment that I was like, holy shit, I'm actually is this really true? Can I really not trust him or rely on him? If I have to go back to 4 or 5 years ago to find another instance of when I was let down, and I was like, this is nonsense. And so I started thinking about how in prior relationships, I wouldn't have been aware enough to break this patterning, right? I was locked into it. And so I focused on everything that was wrong in the relationship. I focused on all of the things that I wanted and I expected from my partner that they weren't doing. I focused on everything that was missing. Never really appreciating what was. And so obviously none of those relationships worked out. And, there's other reasonings behind why relationships fail and compatibility. And there's so many layers to this, but one of the layers is, what are we focusing on to create the relationship? So again, in those relationships, I focused on everything that was wrong. I criticized them. I only noticed what they did wrong. And so in my current relationship, I knew that didn't work. And not only that, it makes your partner feel like shit if you're constantly cutting them down and telling them what's wrong with them. Think about how we would feel if somebody were to constantly tell us everything we did wrong. Nobody is perfect. Nobody out there is perfect. So if we are with somebody who's constantly pointing out our faults and our mistakes and our flaws and never acknowledging anything good about us, it doesn't feel good, right? And then we don't feel good, and we don't want to be around those people because we feel like crap when we're around them. At least, I do. Like, I've distanced myself from people that are that way. However, I was this way in my, last relationships where I did that to my partner. I cut them down. I criticized them. I treated them like a child, and I, really completely invalidated them as a person. Right? So, invalidating somebody and treating them like a child when they're an adult, it doesn't feel good, and it doesn't make the relationship better for anybody. But if that's all we're focusing on, that's what we're going to keep creating in the relationship. And so, going back to what prompted me to do this video is I realized, when I had to pull up evidence of something that happened so many years ago, I was like, I could keep going down this tangent, and I can, walk out of this bathroom and be still completely angry and upset at, this expectation that wasn't met, and about how he's a terrible partner because he always lets me down and I can't trust him. Or I can acknowledge that, yes, I was upset. I had an expectation that wasn't met, but he's not a terrible person. He comes through for me so many times in so many ways and has been such a contribution that why don't I focus on that? Like, yes, this upset happened, right? I became upset over something. We can deal with that. We can work it out. He can, apologize. Life happens, right? To all of us, like, how often have you planned or said you were going to do, or be somewhere, and something unexpected happened, or there was a car accident and you're delayed in traffic, or, in my case, there's train delays and you're stuck sitting on, the subway for 10, 15 minutes, causing you to be late, or, there's a party for a friend, but you've already committed to, working that day, or there's so many ways and reasons, or a child gets sick and you have to back out at the last minute, that we can let people down, where people have expectations of us, and life just happens. So, deal with those upsets. Deal with, I really was expecting this. I was really looking forward to this, whatever the reasonings are, and get it out and work through it. But if you stay focused on everything that's wrong, that's all you're going to see. And so shifting my perspective to really look at, like, okay, what is going on? Like, how many times has he actually contributed to me? How many times has he, been there and stepped up and helped out? And how many times without me asking, like without me expecting it, right? So let me appreciate all of those, because at the end of the day, like, I want a good partner. And, for me, having a relationship where there's appreciation and gratitude for each other is so much, more fulfilling than being in a relationship where you spend your time cutting each other down and criticizing each other. Because it's usually not one way. With my ex, I certainly did more of the criticizing, I think, from my memory. However, he wasn't silent all the time. Like, he dealt with it, didn't open his mouth because, he was just going to let me go, and he knew there was no reaching me. So why bother saying anything, because he was just going to be in more trouble, right? And you can even find some parodies of situations like this if you search YouTube, of what relationships look like and problems in relationships, and, the stereotypical way of dealing with it. And, it's usually, unfortunately, a woman, ripping into a man, and him just sitting there like, okay, just going to take it. Not going to say anything. Not going to make her mad. She's always right. Like, that relationship doesn't work for me. It didn't work for me. And then, the hurtful things are said, and you can't take them back. And you can't undo all of that damage. If you're looking to change your relationship, into one of appreciation, and it's been one of criticism, it's possible, but you have to understand that your partner is probably not going to trust you right away. If you sit there and you're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for doing that, I really appreciate it, you'll probably be met with suspicion for a while, because chances are you might have only been nice when you wanted something and you wanted to try to get your own way, right? So at least that was me. That was my game, right? I could be a bitch, criticize, cut him down, tell him everything that was wrong, and then be really super sweet when I wanted something. And, you know, I was probably going to get my own way anyway, but that was our pattern of behavior. So, you know, when I was in this relationship and I did realize that, you know, where I was focusing was on everything that was wrong and missing. So I thought, all right, let me try and change this. It's not easy because this person doesn't trust you anymore, right? You've broken that because you've been spending, you know, sometimes years, 10, 15, 20 years cutting somebody down. They're not going to automatically believe that you've changed overnight. And nobody does change overnight. I mean, you can work at being a better person slowly, you know, and, you know, maybe sometimes it does, somebody is rapidly able to become an amazing person overnight. I've never seen it. It's taken me years and I still have setbacks. You know, as good as I am at mastering, you know, my emotions and what's going on and what I want to create, there are still times where I just, you know, I revert to old patterning, and that's really all it is. At least that's the way I look at it. It's just old conditioning that's cropping up, and, you know, like this train of thought that I had just last week or 2 weeks ago when I was in the bathroom going, man, I can't trust him. He lets me down all the time, you know, and that old patterning was reignited, and it started picking up, you know, more thoughts like that. And I started scanning my memories to validate this belief that I was forming of what a horrible person he was, because I can't trust him and I can't, you know, because he lets me down. And realistically, he probably let me down over something stupid because I can't even remember it. So maybe he said he was going to show up somewhere and he didn't, or he was late, or he said he was going to call and he didn't, like, you know, really something minor. Because again, I don't remember it. So it's not like I don't know, I can't even think of an instance that would be big enough for me to change this trajectory of thought into something, you know, of him being a horrible person. So anyway, let me go back. So we get where we focus in the relationship, right? So recognizing old patterning, you know, when it comes up, like I did, allows me to change it, allows me to break that habit and to go, you know, lay out this new pattern of thinking and appreciation that is what I actually want to create and what contributes to me and to my life. Like I want a partner that I can count on and that can help me and help me, inspire me to be a better person. I don't want somebody that I have to, you know, control and be a parent to and dictate. And a lot of times we take those jobs on ourselves. Nobody asks us to. You know, in the case of my partner, he was my ex-boyfriend. He was, you know, he lived a life on his own for a fair number of years, right? Without my influence, and he survived and he did well. Now, well, according to whose standards? Mine, maybe not. But to his, he was fine. So, you know, when we sit there and we judge somebody else and, you know, criticize and cut them down, like, it's just, for me, it's not creating the type of relationships that I want. I really want to stand in having those relationships that contribute to me. And when upsets happen and things go wrong, just acknowledging it for what it is. Like, somebody didn't show up the way I expected them to. And so, you know, there's this whole thing of like, if you don't have expectations, you can never be hurt. And that's true. You know, and it's a very cynical way of looking at things, because if there's something I want, I can expect it to happen. But pinning it on somebody is where we get the upset, right? Like, I expected him to show up because he's here, because, you know, he's my partner, because of all my reasons and justifications why he should be the one that does this when I want it. Instead of just going like, hey, this is what I want, and I wonder who's going to give it to me, right? Who's going to be able to show up, who's going to be able to create this with me, and who's going to be able to contribute with me. So there's a big difference there, from being the cynical, don't have expectations so you can't be hurt, to being, yeah, expect what you want, but just don't expect it from the person that you think it should be, because we don't see all the pieces. We don't have access to everything. We don't know what people have been through, right? So rather than cutting people down, how about we help build them up, help appreciate the good things, like focus on that, because what you focus on is what you're going to create. So I would love to see, more relationships that are a contribution to each other than those that are full of drama and stress and cut people down. So if that sounds like something that you would want, come chat with me. I'd love to see what we can create for you. I have a program called Relationships Reimagined where I focus on just that and helping people get past these old patternings and these ways of thinking so that they can actually form new ways that support what it is that they're asking for. And so you can there's a link here in YouTube that you can click on. You can send me a message on my Facebook page or send me an email, victoria@victorialongo.net, and I'd love to chat with you. Next week, I have a video. It's called Finding the Right Partner for You. And this is a big one, I think, when people are creating relationships. And it's something that I don't know that people actually take into consideration. So I'm going to go over, how do we create this? Like how did I create a partner that actually, meets all of these things that I was looking for in a relationship? Because I did create it. And he was asking for the same thing, which is what allowed us to show up in each other's lives. So, when you're clear on that, you can really create something incredible with each other. So I look forward to sharing that with you next week at our Friday at 5. But thank you so much for watching this week. Please, if you've enjoyed this, like the video, subscribe to my channel so that you can get more updates and be notified when new videos are released. And I look forward to chatting with you next week.